Pro Bono was founded in 2001, and the idea was to bridge the gap between low-income people in Ontario who needed a lawyer but couldn't afford one, and lawyers who wanted to donate their services. Sometimes also people might have issues that Legal Aid Ontario doesn't cover. So Pro Bono helps with things like if you have been the victim of a predatory loan, or if you have been evicted from your apartment, or if you are either suing someone or defending a lawsuit, and a wide range of issues, and one of them is powers of attorney. We also help people prepare powers of attorney. And Pro Bono offers these services in a number of ways. They operate a hotline, free legal advice hotline, which you can call, and a volunteer lawyer on the other end will help you with your issue. There's various numbers, so if you have a power of attorney question, you can press 6 and get some advice, and the lawyer can actually help you by filling one out and sending it to you for your review. So it's a helpful service for everybody in Ontario. And Pro Bono is also in the courthouses, helping people with their pleadings. They are in the children's hospitals, helping families with a wide range of issues while their children are in the hospital. So it's, it performs a lot of services, and we were fortunate enough to get a grant from Sinai Health Foundation to be able to fund this position. So I'm able to be here and at Mount Sinai 2 days a week helping people with their powers of attorney and wills. So if you're an inpatient or even if you're an outpatient, I can assist you. I wanted to talk a little bit about my caregiving journey. I won't take too long, but let me introduce you to Francis and Freeman Reason, my parents. I just wanted to tell you about this because every time I provide services to a patient here, I think about my experience with caregiving, and it's and all the wide range of challenges I had and questions I had, and this was back in the middle 90s. My mom died when she was almost 81. She was only ill for about 6 months, but I helped my father look after her. And she never lost capacity. So her power, she had powers of attorney in place, but she, people can go to their ends of their lives and never need them, but, and she was one of those people. But sadly, that left my dad at the age of 88 alone, and they'd been married for 55 years. And so that was a bit of a huge loss, and he was very much of a people person, liked to be around people. So we decided we'd move in as a family, my husband and I and our 2 girls who were ages 5 and 10 at the time, and my dad, it ended up being a 7 years of looking after my dad in the home alone together, and then until he developed dementia in his sort of early 90s. He lived to be 98, and he ended up. It ended up that we needed to move him to an assisted living facility, and then very briefly a long-term care home. But I think I experienced a lot of the things that you may be experiencing in those 7 years with trying to access resources and nursing care and adult day program. And I'll tell you the 3 things that helped me the most. One was my husband, who was a great support. I have a brother and a sister, but they didn't live in Toronto, and frankly, they weren't all that helpful. And then we moved, and then the second thing was my dad's personality, which was a positive, optimistic, upbeat kind of personality that never really changed, thank heaven. And the third thing was that he had his affairs in order. He had powers of attorney that he had made when he was capable, and he had a will in place. So of all the issues I had, substitute decision-making wasn't the biggest challenge. There are pros and cons to it, though, because, again, as I mentioned, my siblings, there can be issues with siblings when you have the power of attorney for your parents and they don't, or you're sharing it and you may disagree. So those issues, of course, came up. Nothing too insurmountable, but it's something to remember about powers of attorney and something that some of you may be facing. So I was asked to speak to you about substitute decision making, and I guess this will be a bit of a primer on the whole subject, because some of you, I'm sure, are very well aware of what is involved in a power of attorney, but others may not be so aware. And maybe you've made one for yourself, or maybe you haven't, so that's something else to consider. Could I, so I would just like to point out that this system that we have in Ontario was developed as a result of some reforms in the late 80s and early 90s. And it really falls into these three categories. One is powers of attorney, which is kind of the private system. It's not particularly supervised. You make out your powers of attorney, it has to be witnessed and so on. You don't even have to go to a lawyer to do it. You can download forms from the Ministry of the Attorney General website. You know, it's flexible, but it also is not particularly, you know, it's kind of up to the individual to do the right thing. The other two ways are more in the public realm. One is statutory guardianship through the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee, and the other is court-ordered or court-appointed guardianship. So those are basically the three ways, whether you're looking after a loved one like a parent or even an adult child. Often you need to get documents authority through one of these routes.